Everybody in my neighborhood got high. Automatically fell in love with heroin. I had no direction because I had no father. To the door, there was a guy there standing there with a 357 Magnum pointed right at me. You would think that that would catch somebody's attention. I was hard hitting.
I'm a firm believer that everyone has a purpose in life. Hi, your friend Socrates Lopez from Set Apart Podcast. Today I have our special guest, Michael Maciel. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for accepting this invitation. Michael, I'm a firm believer that stories can change people's lives, especially when God is involved in that story. And I'm pretty sure, based on what I read right here, God has been involved with you ever since you were a young kid. Right?
Yes.
And that's where I want to get into. So let's cut things short. Let's get into this story because I do want to hear your story. Okay. Based on what I read, you have a powerful testimony, and I would love for our viewers to get to know you and get to know where God rescued you from. Michael, who was Michael before knowing Christ?
Well, as far back as I could remember, the first time I had anything to do with Christianity or anything like that, I must have been about 8 years old. And what happened was somebody invited my family, my mom, to a Billy Graham crusade. I believe it was at the Coliseum back in 1960 something. I don't know. Even though I didn't understand it too much, I knew that there was something to this. And so when they gave the invitation, even though I wasn't sure what it was, I remember running down the stairs, for the altar call.
Yeah.
With my mom behind me in hot pursuit because she didn't know where I was going. And, I was kind of mischievous like that. Yeah. So she was yelling my name, but something I felt was pulling me there. Maybe just curiosity or whatever. But I remember at that age that I decided, okay, well, these guys are saying that, I'm going to say it too.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I had anything to do with Christ or Christianity or anything like that. But at that age, it didn't really penetrate. It didn't really, stick.
Yeah.
So most of my life, I would say from about 10 on up, I was like a feral cat. I just used to roam the streets with my friends all over the place. And we would get into a lot of stuff. I mean, even at 10 years old, because of the neighborhood I lived in was very violent. I remember that. I remember growing up seeing the police chasing guys down the street. I remember being at a park one time and there was a shootout and they had the park surrounded and we couldn't come out because, they were looking for the guys. So I grew up in that type of environment. And
where did you grow up?
I grew up in Fullerton. And the neighborhood I was in was mixed. It was mostly Latino, but it was mixed with blacks and a few Caucasians, but mostly Latinos. But in my childhood, most things I remember is just how difficult it seemed life was. Because everything seemed to be something like a challenge. Everything. Because I didn't grow up with a father. My father left my mom when I don't ever even remember him. Not at all. I don't remember him holding me. I don't remember his face. I don't remember anything about him. And many times I would ask my mom, what happened to my dad? I see other kids have a dad. Well, what happened to mine? But she would say that, he left and she never really gave me a really good explanation as to what happened to him.
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up just doing my own thing. No guidance.
I was reading your testimony. You sent me. You says here that you got involved with gang members. Got addicted to heroin, drugs. Yes. Is that because of that situation? The neighborhood you were growing up to, you wanted to fit in, or how did that got to be?
Everybody in my neighborhood got high from a young age. At that time, marijuana was still a felony.
Yeah.
And, it was still a bad thing. But mostly people were taking pills, You know, at that time, a lot of downers and uppers that we used to call them at that time. And I would see everybody getting high. And so, of course, at the age of 11, I wanted to see what that was all about.
Yeah.
So I would get high with them and I would drink. But eventually, what I would do wasn't satisfying enough. You know, people talk about marijuana being a gateway drug. For me, it was. It might not have been for other people, but for me, it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get high, but I would say, "Oh, this got to be something better than this, right?" So I graduated from drinking to smoking weed and drinking to taking pills, and then finally I saw these guys one day in my neighborhood, right across the street. They were all bent over, man, like they were asleep. And I told Mom, so "What's wrong with those guys, man?" And he said, "Oh, they're tecatos. They're heroin addicts." And the first thought I said, "Well, I don't want to be like that, man. These guys look like they're asleep all the time,
Yeah.
you know." So I didn't want anything to do with it. But curiosity got the better of me. Curiosity got me, and I would ask questions. And then one day, a close relative of mine, um, they were getting high like that, and they were trying to keep it undercover. But I asked them, I said, "What are you guys doing?" And they told me, and I said, "Well, I want some. I want to see what it feels like." And they agreed, and they got me high. And I got to tell you, man, it was a high that I did not expect.
How old were you by
At that time, I was 15,
15?
15 years old. And I automatically fell in love with that high. I automatically fell in love with heroin.
Mm.
And from that point on, that kind of ruled my life. You know, it was what I surrounded my life with on just getting high. I had no idea about being addicted or anything else like that. After a few weeks, I began to feel the effects of that when I didn't get it. And then someone told me, "Oh, well, you're hooked now.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have to do?" And I said, "So well, you have to do is keep high." And I said, "Well, okay." So that led to a lifetime of crime, a lifetime of violence, a lifetime of just heartbreak, not only for me, but for my family, and especially my mom, because she was a single mom, so she had to deal with that. And from that point on, it was downhill, even from that age.
Wow. So you said from that point on, downhill, problems with your mom, single mom.
Yeah.
You have any siblings?
Yes, I have a sister.
Sister?
Yeah.
How was your relationship with your mom while you were dealing with drugs, getting involved with gangs? How did she react upon that? And I mean, what happened, man?
Well, I think first of all, I think she was in denial. Oh, he's not like that. He may drink, but obviously after a little bit of time, she realized something was really wrong with me, especially when things started to show up missing. I was stealing from her just so I can get high. My brother used to sniff. They called it pizzazz, but it was a mixture of like paint and synthetic reducer.
Mm-hmm.
Strong stuff, man. But he would put it on a rag and sniff it like that. Yeah, it would really put you in some really deep, ugly, hallucinatory type of dreams or whatever you want to call that. For him, my brother Solomon, he was about 18 when that started to get the best of him, because he was diabetic and he didn't know it, so he didn't take any medication for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day he fell in a coma, and he died.
He died.
He died
At the age of 18.
At the age, I think he was 19 when he died. It was somewhere around 1978 or something.
And how did that affect you?
Well, I loved my brother. He was younger than me, and it really took a toll on me because I used to tell him, "Saulo, what you're doing is going to take your life before this ever takes mine," because I could see the effects on him, man. He would just sit in one corner all day and just get high all day. Unless he had to go to the bathroom or he had to go to the store, that was his life. And eventually, because of the knowledge of, I shouldn't say that, I should say, because he didn't realize his medical condition, and he didn't take care of himself. So I don't know exactly what it was that caused him to lose his life, but it didn't matter to me. My brother was dead,
Yeah.
and that really affected me, man. We were pretty close.
I'm guessing it affected you more on the way that you, I don't know, you got more violent, more involved with drugs, more crime,
All of the above.
all of the above.
All of the above. Because I looked at life like, if life is that short and you can expect death at any time, you might as well live life to what I consider to the fullest, man. As much as you can, get as much as you can, because it's over when you die.
Yeah.
Even though I had gone to church, and even though my mom used to take me, that did not deter me from what I was facing in the streets.
Yeah.
You know, I had no direction because I had no father. And when everybody tried to tell me something, I was so hard-headed and rebellious, I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
You know, I just didn't want to hear it. And I lived my life like that for a very, very long time.
What happened in between? Because there's in between. There's a before Christ and there's an after Christ, but there's the in between, right? I know you said your church was, you went to a Billy Graham crusade when you were about 8,
Yeah.
right? And you felt like God was calling you. As we mentioned prior to this, I didn't know you went to a crusade. I didn't know you went to a Billy Graham crusade by the time you were 8. And I told you prior to starting the recording that God's been involved with your life ever since you were a kid. I didn't know nothing about that Billy Graham crusade, but I just, something in my heart told me that God was in your life. He was involved in your life ever since you were a little kid. And
interesting enough, too, Socrates, interesting enough, I don't remember if it was how long it was after that, that I had went to the boys club to go swimming, right? And it was closed. The pool was closed, but somebody had left the back gate open, right? And me thinking as a child, like I was about 10, I think, at that time. Yeah, me as a child thinking, well, I could swim. I dove in and I couldn't swim. And I immediately sank to the bottom of the pool. And somebody walked out and saw me at the bottom of the pool and called for the coach. I remember his name was Pete. I can't remember his last name, but he came, from what I was told, he came running and dove in and took me out of the pool. And it took him a while for them to revive me because all I remember is my mom being there and then them taking me to the hospital. But I almost lost my life at 10 at that time. It wasn't too much longer after that.
It's God's hand. I'm a firm believer that everyone has a purpose in life.
Yeah.
You were created to do something specific. Yeah, we're all created to worship God, to glorify Him, right?
Yes,
to preach His word. But there's still a little bit more to it. And God's been involved with you ever since you were a little kid.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How did you came to know Jesus? You're involved with drugs, gangs, violence, crime, all of that stuff, right? You're getting high with heroin, all of that stuff. What led you to accepting Jesus Christ?
Water.
Was there a specific situation in your life that led you to, hey, God, I need you?
One of the situations that I can think of that really got my attention was I went with one of my homeboys to rob rob a drug dealer. Right? The plan didn't go right.
Okay.
Right? The plan didn't go right. He kicked the door in when he wasn't supposed to, and I ran first. Right? And by the time I got through the door, there was a guy there standing there with a .357 Magnum pointed right at me. Before he can get off a shot, he got shot. Right? And we ended up robbing them. And I never knew what happened at that time. But I know that it did something to me. It was like a flash. I could have been dead right there. And I thought it was my own way to save my life, but really it was God, because he has done that more times in my life than I can count.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of time. I've overdosed and woke up with the needle stuck in my arm, blood running down my arm, but I was still alive. That happened about 4 times.
4 times.
And times that I had gotten shot, I got stabbed right here. Doctor said if they would have cut my temples there, so about a couple more millimeters, and it would have went into my temple. I still have the scar right there. That would have killed me. So he spared my life, and I started thinking, why is God sparing my life so much, man? You know, you would think that would catch somebody's attention. That was hard hitting, very hard hitting, and I just thought it was just coincidence, luck, whatever it was. But after a while, I couldn't deny the fact that God was sparing my life, but even that His patience had a limit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would hear God speak to me and says, "You can't go on like this. You know, you just can't. You can't. There are consequences to the things that you're doing, and you're going to have to face them one day, especially if you don't stop." And that's why I went to prison. I went to prison so many times. I did about probably 10 years as an adult, and I can't even count as a juvenile. I was always busted. It seemed like always in jail.
They already knew you in jail.
Yeah.
Oh, here he comes again.
Yeah. Everybody that at that time, you know, when you'd show up, you knew everybody because you grew up in the system with them, you know? And so I had reserved myself that was going to be my life, even though I had been introduced to Christ at a very young age. It was like it really didn't take any effect, you know? But after years of that, I just got tired. I got tired. And I know they use this cliche, you get tired of being sick and tired, but I was. And as difficult as it was to make the transition, I learned that it was so difficult because I surrendered to God with my terms on how I wanted to live my life. You know, that's okay. Okay, if you want me to do that, but I'm not going to stop doing this. I'm not going to stop getting high. I'm not going to stop, being with who I want to be with. And so it was just like a really vivid, vicious cycle that I was involved in.
Wow.
You know, just doing okay for a little while, and then just absolutely blowing it the next.
Wow.
And I think that there are a lot of people out there that grew up in church, but because of the peer pressure of what goes on in life, they tend to bend towards it, or they don't want to be as committed. And to me, it was just like I was just stalling my own spiritual growth. Then finally, I just said, I'm tired. I'm tired. I need to change. And it was not easy at all. But I know that even though it took time, and even though I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say, man, I got a lot of issues still. I'm still broken in many ways. I know without a shadow of a doubt that it is God that's spared my life since childhood. I know that Jesus has a plan for me, no matter what I may think or say. And it's up to me to co-partner with him, to hook up with him for those plans to take fruit, and for God to begin to minister in my life the way he wants to. And it's I'm not there yet, but I'm glad I'm at least in that direction.
What is Michael Maciel doing right now for Christ?
Right now, what I'm doing is obviously I go to church.
Yeah.
I still go to church, but what I do is I have a philosophy that every day I get up, I've got to do at least one thing kind or nice to somebody without expecting anything in return. And if they ask me the question about, well, why are you doing this? That's the door that opens for me to say, well, this is why, and this is what God has done in my life, and this is how Jesus has changed my life, and he can do that for you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I'm pretty sure that our viewers who are watching this episode, Michael, some are going to identify with your story. So I wanted to ask you if you can say any last words to whoever's watching that this episode who might relate, who's struggling with drugs, who's involved with gangs, crime, he's in jail, he or she's in jail, right? And they want out. They're done. They're tired. You were once tired, right? What can you tell them?
The first thing I would say, I really believe I'm speaking to at least two groups: those who do not know Christ and those who have grown up in church and may be in a backslidden situation. The first group, those who put all their trust and their loyalty to a neighborhood or to a gang. I'm gonna tell you right now, at 67 years old, there's no good ending to that story. None. I promise you, no matter how much work you put in, now how much you may be down for the neighborhood, if you commit a certain crime and you do time, especially if it's years, you will be forgotten from everyone else except your family and close friends. Being in jail and in prison for years upon years is not where you want to end up. You may not trip on it right now, but believe me, when you get into that situation, you will regret it. And I'm trying to tell somebody right here, right now, it doesn't matter the situation you may be in. God has a plan for you. All you got to do is accept that plan, receive it, and start to do things God's way. That's what he told me when it became difficult. And I said, man, I can't do this. This is too hard. I don't know where to begin. God says, look, all you got to do is trust me. Trust me. Learn about me. Get to know me. I promise you I'll always be there. And he has. He's spared my life more times than I can count. And I thank God for what he's done in my life. He's given me a beautiful wife that I'm married to. He's given me purpose and joy. Now, I don't always have joy. Sometimes things come up that test me to the core. But God has never, ever abandoned me. And for that, I would tell you, if you're wherever the situation you're in right now, if you're in jail, or if you're on the streets, if you're in a rehab home, open up your heart to Christ and you will not regret it. I promise you that.
Michael, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. I am a truly believer that your story is going to change people's lives.
I believe that.
So thank you very much. Thank you again for tuning in into the Set Apart podcast. Until next time.